Hey guys, welcome back to Musings of Maverick. I'm your host Maverick, and today we're going to be watching Boogiepop episode 8. So, last episode, Nagi's younger half-brother Misaki finally got fed up with the whole situation regarding Orihara, so he decided to run off and cosplay Boogiepop / do some Batman work all by himself, apparently for the purpose of also investigating the situation regarding Orihara. How he's going to accomplish that, I don't know, but for the time being, he seems to be out of the picture. On the other hand, Spooky rather conveniently managed to possess Kotoe, who is the, I believe, cousin of Asukai, the teacher. And apparently he is assembling a team, a force, to avenge the people who were healed, quote unquote, by Asukai. And he's doing this in the hopes of luring out Boogiepop, because Boogiepop wants to find Imaginator, Asukai, and if Spooky forces a confrontation with the Imaginator or Asukai, then maybe he can also find Boogiepop as well. Seems a roundabout way of doing things, but hey, we gotta have some excuse for a conflict, right? And our titular character Boogiepop is still nowhere to be found. We don't really know anything about the Towa organization, their motives and whatnot, or how they are, why exactly they want to find Boogiepop so bad. Hopefully we can start shedding some light on this within this episode, or at least sometime in the near future. It'd be nice to see who exactly we're up against and what their motives are. Although I have a feeling that this episode probably is going to focus on the conflict between Imaginator and Asukai versus the Towa organization, or Spooky in particular. And then maybe Boogiepop is going to show up at the very end. But I'm hopeful that maybe the confrontation between the other two parties will also allow us to gain some insight as to the workings and motives and organization of the Towa organization. My voice is a bit coarse right now. I'm in the middle of a cold, so I apologize for that. Hopefully it won't affect the video. So, let's get into the episode. I skipped the opening, and let's just begin. So, starting in 3, 2, 1, play. He's still reading a book from Nagi's father. Oh, Boogiepop. Wow, she can change just like that? Huh.
なぜそう思う？
なんとなくそんな気がして、絹川さんはあなたのことを心配していました。
心配？どういうことだ？
それは言えません。約束しましたから。でもお会いして絹川さんの気持ちが少しだけ分かった気がします。彼女も変わったけど、おそらくあなたも変わってしまったんですね、きっと。
かもしれないね。私は結局彼女の気持ちには応えられないのだろ
う。そこです。昔のあなたにはそんな風に気遣いをする余裕はなかったと思うんです。絹川さんはそんなあなたの力になりたかったんです、きっと。寂しい絵ですよね。きっとあなたそのものですね、変わってしまう前の。
君に絵のことが。いや、君は頭が相当いいようだね。だから今回の一件が腑に落ちないんだろう。
そんなことは。
友人と言ったが、君は琴恵ちゃんとそれほど馬が合うタイプとは思えない。君は自分が納得したいだけだ。
Oh.
違うか？
それはあるかもしれません。でも
なんだい？
彼女を救いたいんです。親しくないからこそ絹川さんの力になりたいんです。
なるほど。
そのためにはまずあなたのことを知るべきだと思って。
私のことをね。君は私が何をしているのか知りたいか？私は世界を変えようと思っている。人の心に欠けているものを何とかして埋めてやろうと、そう思っている。その方法として人の心に花の種を植え付けるというのを考えた。
He's just telling her just like that?
問題はその種のバランスだった。何一つ形にはなっていなくて、どの思いも何一つ叶えられていない。だがそれゆえに全ての要素を持っているという、そういう種のバランス。幸いなことに私は以前にそのバランスを持った少女を見かけたことが。
It's an imaginator?
あとはその少女を見つけて種を取り出し世界にばらまく。やがて根付いた種により世界の人々は自分でも気づかぬうちにその心の欠落が埋められる。少女にはそのための犠牲になってもらう。君の心にも欠けているものがある。自分でも分かっているだろう。それを私が埋めてやると言ったら君はどうする？
私はもう別の人に助けてもらいましたから。
お？誰に？
ブギーポップにです。
ああ、例の正義の味方かな。
そんな簡単なものじゃ。それならあなただって世界を変えるとか。
絵の話さ。ああ、絵描きはみんなそれぐらいの思いを抱いている。
でも少女には犠牲になってもらうってさっき。
絵のモデルは8時間近くじっとしていなければならないから。少女というのが、
Nice misdirection.
琴恵ちゃんはそれで焼き餅を焼いているのかもしれない。だから琴恵ちゃんに会って誤解を解いておくよ。
そうですか。わかりました。失礼します。
Oh.
あの子、なぜわかったのかしら。別に何か特別というわけでもなかったけど。
確かに彼女の言う通りだ。どうやらこちらを先に片付けなきゃならないようだ。もはや対決は避けられない。直接スプーキー E をやる。
Oh, he does know the existence of Spooky. Huh.
あいつだわ、間違いない。こんなところに寝泊まりしてたとはね。へえ、結構真面目にブギーポップやってんだ。
つけているのは2人。いや、全部で6人か。けど、なんであの女が
なさい。私に考えがあるわ。ねえ、谷口正樹くん、あなたあの子のためにブギーポップ続けてるんでしょ？でもあんな女に義理立てする必要なんてないわ。私はあの子が誰に何をさせられていたかよく知ってるから。ねえ知ってる？あの子影じゃ公衆便所って呼ばれてるのよ。思えばあなたもかわいそうな人ね。まんまと純情そうな外見に騙されて。
Dang. An actual action scene.
やるじゃない、谷口正樹。
僕は谷口正樹じゃない。ブギーポップだ。
アクシズに報告すれば組対として欲しがるかもしれないわね。
話してもらおうか。折畑は何をさせられていたんだ？
何言って、知らない方が幸せかもよ。
貴様がさせていたのか？
だとしたら。
お前はなんで僕をつけている？折畑はどこだ？
さてどこでしょうね。
答えろ。
まずあなたをつけてる理由だけど、あなたを殺してブギーポップの死体を晒し者にするつもりだったからよ。そもそもなんで自分がそんなバカな真似事をしているかちゃんと考えた？
どういう意味だ？
殺せば。晒し者もいいけど殺人者に仕立てるというのも悪くないわ。
ふざけやがって。
何してんのかと思えばこのバカ。たく、人殺しなんかさせたらあんたの親に顔向けできないだろうが。よりによってそんな格好するとはね。一体誰に吹き込まれたんだ？
ごめん、なぎ姉さん。
おい！あのバカ。なんなのあんた。おっと、あんたは動くんじゃない。絹川琴江の偽物。
Ooh.
絹川琴江の素行が急に荒れたのはなんでかと思っていたけど、こういうこととはね。この俺のことを知らない奴は信用学園の生徒にはいないんだよ。何者だ貴様。聞くのはこっちの方だ。お前のバックにいる奴は誰だ？答えな。
It probably doesn't. I mean, trying to threaten Spooky's shell doesn't really matter much, does it?
先にこっちを済ませるか。
And none of them have weapons?
多分例のやつの仕業だと思うから、これでうまくいくはずだけどね。
I wonder if Nagi is just
あいつ何が？
a normal human who's trained.
そうだ、俺はあいつに。
Hmm?
誰だてめえは。離せ。お前何を。
琴江ちゃん、君の気持ちには前から気づいていた。私のことを思ってくれていることは。
Dang, they went from a very slow episode to suddenly a super accelerated episode.
お前誰だ？
君は自分に夢中になれるものがなく、いつも悲しい思いをしていた。だから私に好意を持った。私が君と同じ悲しみを抱いていると錯覚して。そう。君のそれとは違って、私 私のはただの絶望なんだ。私は悲しむこともできないんだよ。だから君の気持ちには答えられなかったんだ。ああ、ずっとそう思っている。だがそれができない。今でもどうしていいのか。
What?
だからせめて君のような思いをすることがない世界へと作り変える。その種のありかへ私は行く。
Who exactly is the scene?
バカな。こいつらどういうことだ。さあ誰も出やしねえ。端末どもが一体何がどうなってやがる。おのれ、こうなったらこいつで。それか例の消毒薬とやらは。
Ooh, confrontation between Spooky and Asukai.
お前だな、スプーキーエレクトリック君。誰だ貴様。君は私を探していたはずだ。違うかな。まさか。ああ、君らはイマジネーターと呼んでいる。一体何をした。どうして洗脳が。君と私とでは。
You done goofed, Spooky.
東亜機構というんだろ。君の属する組織、いやシステムかな。何かが変わりつつある。その変化を君たちが監視している。違うかな。君が一般人に薬を投与し反応を調べたりするのはその度合いを探っているのだ。そうなんだろ。そこまで知ってしまったということがどういうことが分かっているのか。東亜機構を敵にして生きていられると思うな。俺をどうこうしたところでどの道おしまいだ。敵か。何がおかしい。敵といえば君は知っているかな。何をだ。君がやっていた実験とやらで何人かの人間が死んでいる。投与された薬品でアレルギーを起こしたりショック症状が出てしまったり。それがどうした。大したことじゃない。その通り、大したことではない。交通事故のようなもので運がなかったといえばそれまでだ。運がなかったよ、まったく。あの人は本当に運がなかった。何のことだ。さっきから何を言ってるんだ貴様。歴史の話だよ。何。敵を前にしたとき最も賢い選択とは何か。歴史がそれを証明している。敵を味方につけてしまうことだよ。これが最も賢く最も効率的な方法だ。敵、いや旧敵と言うべきだな。君は何だと。君と私はそっくりな能力を持っている。これは大いに好都合だ。つまり私が同じようなことをしてもそれは東亜機構には君のようにしか見えないということだ。貴様、まさか。そのまさかだ。
Dang.
東亜機構を乗っ取る。そしていずれは東亜機構にもイマジネーターを増やしていく。それが私の構想だ。そんなことができるさ。これは必然なんだ。私の計画を世界中で実現させるためには強大な組織的後ろ盾が不可欠だからね。計画だと。簡単に言うと全人類の精神を同じ状態にすること。
Yeah, I got that.
そうすれば悲しいすれ違いも誤解も何もなくなるだろう。こいつ完全にイカれてやがる。
Dang.
どうした。体が前に。体じゃない。気が進まないのさ。何をした。君の鼻からトゲを取った。それだけだ。君から攻撃衝動というものを取ってしまった。
Dang.
そん とは次元が違うと。いいか、君の能力、電気刺激による脳の操作というやつには魂という観念が。
Lacks the concept of a soul.
君は人を突き動かしている根源的な存在を知らず、ただ心の上に乱暴なサンプルをすり込んでいるだけだ。それでは決定的な変化を人間に与えることができない。まず人の心の欠落を知り、いかにそこを埋めるかというような発想が重要だ。いわば接ぎ木のようなね。パートナーが見つかり次第、君にもすぐ根を植え付けてあげよう。代わりに君からは強い幹をいただく。力強い精神力が多少削られることになるが、喜びの方がはるかに勝るよ。わからん。今はね。ただ人々はとても喜んでくれた。みんな私
Dang.
いや、わからないのは、貴様が何が面白くてそんなことをしているかだ。まあ、もうどうでもいい。前から試してみたかったんだが、憎しみが強すぎてできなかった。お前の言うトゲとやらがなくなったおかげかもしれん。イマジネーター、ブギーポップが貴様を狙っているぞ。
So he can still suicide? Okay.
どうにかして逃げなくちゃ。誰？どうしてあなたが？
いや、覚えていてくれたようだね。
お願いです。私を助けてくれませんか？
残念だがそれはできない。君には犠牲になってもらう。
どういうことですか？
時間があまりない。スプーキー E が死んでしまったのは計算外だった。
死んだ？
いずれ東亜機構の手の者がこの町にやってくる。それまでにこの町だけでも雪を降らせておく。
それじゃあの人は。
オリハタか？
まさき。
もしもし、もしもし、オリハタいるんだろそこに。オリハタ、オリハタ、頼む返事をしてくれ。オリハタ。
Hmm. Alright. Alright. Now this is something we can work with. I'll see you guys after the ending. Alrighty, let's get into the review part. Now, this episode's pacing was definitely much more suited to my liking than the previous episode. We got some action, although it's not really the most important part. The important part is we got a ton of info as well. You know, compared to the sort of slug that was last episode, this one almost seemed completely accelerated. Like you're on a roller coaster and all of a sudden you're at the top and going downhill from there. I almost felt like they needed to slow down a little bit because it was information overload. But anyways, since there's so much info, I'm just going to jump right in. And there's three main parts I want to talk about for this episode. First of all, let's focus on Asukai, since he's also the guy who first appeared within this episode. So at the beginning, he was actually reading a book by Kirin Seiichi, who is, again, sort of like this important character, even though we don't know much about him and how he relates to all the other characters. He was Nagi's father, and he wrote a lot of these books. Who, you know, Suema also likes to read, and apparently Boogiepop also reads as well. Maybe they have some sort of relationship. Definitely, probably this is going to be an important character since a lot of his works are being interlaced throughout this whole series. Still don't know what it is yet, but something to keep in mind about. Now, he was talking about the concept, which I guess isn't really that surprising, or that unexpected, and it's basically talking about the theory of, any kind of living being on this planet has one ultimate goal, and that is to pass on their genes to the next generation, to their offspring. And so he was talking about how dreams of yourself can be achieved by your offspring. And so that is why it's so important to do that, because then your dreams can be achieved. It makes sense, right? Now, Asukai didn't really go for that kind of explanation. He had a different understanding in regards to sacrifice. Or maybe it's kind of similar. I'll talk more about that at the end of the episode. And if it's not, then it's also kind of ironic as well. Again, I'll talk about that part a little bit later. And then immediately after that, we got the Suema meeting with Asukai. And then we talked, he basically sort of explains what his motive, what his ideology is. We kind of already knew that he was trying to build this perfect world where he can fill in the void within people's hearts. But now, personally, I thought that his problem right now was that he couldn't find a way to scale up. Like, how can he do this kind of thing at a larger scale and affect more people? Now, as it turns out, this is part of his problem as well. But an even bigger problem is that he actually can't just fix them. Like, his fixes to people right now is incomplete. As he mentioned, it's unbalanced. So he actually needs this perfect seed in order for him to get this perfect flower that's going to grow in everybody's hearts. So we now know that what his mission and goal is, and which also relates to the very end of this episode as well. Now, the one thing that kind of bugged me in regards to that scene is, excuse me a minute. Yeah, sorry about that. I had to get a quick cough off. As I was saying, one thing that kind of bothers me is why he didn't just take care of Suema right then and there. Later on, when the Imaginator popped up as well, they both agreed that Suema knowing about the situation is kind of a problem, right? It's a hidden threat. So I don't understand why he didn't just brainwash her, right there, so that all the loose ends are taken care of. There's nothing stopping him from just doing that directly. So I don't know, that's just a decision that doesn't really make much sense to me. If there's something maybe further in the light novel, or you guys have some other theories, maybe let me know. I really couldn't make sense of why he just let Suema walk away like that. So that was the first part, the, I guess, Asukai part of the episode. Now let's talk about Misaki. So I actually did not expect him to resolve Misaki's sort of like mini side plot this early, especially considering that when Spooky E possessed, brainwashed, etc. Kotoe, I thought that her mission or her goal was to try to find a way to find Imaginator. I didn't really think that they would be going after Misaki. So that, again, is something that, I don't know, doesn't really make sense, especially since originally when she was recruiting these thugs, she used the offer of hunting down the Imaginator in order to do that. So that's whatever. And that's why I also felt like this episode was kind of accelerated, because I didn't expect them to resolve this side plot so early. So, it's nice. We got some action scenes. For me, this anime isn't really much about looking at the action, but it was well animated. The fights were choreography was pretty nicely done. We got to see a lot of actual karate moves, and actually it kind of felt like a John Wick scene, to be honest, when Misaki was fighting, and also later on when Nagi was fighting the thugs. Now, something that I am kind of curious about is, do Nagi and Misaki have some inherent special powers to them as well? Like, I know they're protagonists, but at the same time, Nagi took on 10 armed thugs, men too. So, whereas Misaki took on 4, and one of them also had a gun, one had a knife. Now, I don't care what kind of karate training you have, you're not going to be able to go against those kinds of odds. That's more Hollywood, right? So maybe I'm looking too much into it, and this is just basically a Hollywood moment, but at the same time, I kind of feel like unless they have some kind of special inherent power to them, they shouldn't be able to do this so easily. So that was, I guess, that was Misaki's part. Not really much to talk about there. I guess, and then Asukai later came over as well, and to fix up the situation with Kotoe. Not much to comment there. I mean, I thought it was fairly self-explanatory, everything that happened there. So let's just move on to the final, I guess, mini arc within this episode, and that is the showdown between Spooky E and Asukai. Now, I was expecting this because it felt like, it seemed like the logical thing to do. Them having a show off, and then also we can learn a little bit more about the Toro organization as well as Asukai himself. And we did get both. So apparently the Toro organization is trying to monitor change. Still kind of vague, but at least we know. Well, we already knew that they were doing some kind of experiments in this city. So still not quite sure what their final goal is, but yeah, it's whatever. So I think the main thing to take away from that entire part is Asukai's plan, right? So this is the part where he is going to scale up by taking sort of control of the Toro organization. Then he can have the means to basically spread his influence further and further away instead of just being him, a lone person. And you can, it's fairly unfeasible for one single guy to spread his magic power, his heart healing powers, if you will, to the rest of the country and to the entire world. So that part kind of made sense. And also, with this scene, we can also kind of infer what exactly a flower constitutes, right? We know the flower is the makings of the heart, the conscious, whatever you want to call it. But as it stands right now, I'm thinking what they correlate to is the flower correlates to maybe a goal or a mission. So your direction in life. Do you have something that you want to do? Do you have a calling in life? So that's the flower part. The stem apparently has to do with your mental fortitude, your mental capacity, your resolve, I guess, your determination, that kind of thing. And the thorns, fairly straightforwardly deals with your aggression factor. Still not quite sure what the roots are supposed to signify, but that part, at least we can infer, should be, the other three parts should be these three. Another thing that we learned is, because there was one specific piece of dialogue where he said, okay, Spooky, don't worry, I'll fix you, we just have to find you a partner first. And then he mentioned how fixing someone's heart is more like grafting. So this actually makes me think, maybe Asukai's power is actually more like a skin graft. So you remove something from some people and then you put them onto another person, and that is why they need to be in twos or have partners. We also saw this a little bit within I believe the previous episode, or was it 2 episodes ago, when he helped heal those 2 girl students and was also seen by Suema, right? So they had to be 2 in a pair. So now I think, that is what the situation is. He can't just grow a flower out of thin air. He has to, borrow from somebody else and then graft it into someone else. So basically sort of complement each other. So maybe one would have a flower and would have a strong stem. The other might have more strong roots and thorns, and then he can just, cross between these 2. So I think that is how his abilities work, at least in terms of, so he can remove, but he can't actually grow a flower out. He needs the seed for that. And that brings me to the final point of this episode. So, judging from the dialogue, it seems that the seed is actually Orihara, right? And I mentioned at the very beginning of this review that it was kind of ironic because, remember Asukai was reading the book by Kirima, who talked about the offspring being the sacrifice. I mean, you sacrifice yourself so that you can allow your offspring to continue on with your dreams and aspirations. Now here, the ironic thing is Orihara apparently cannot have offspring, right? As far as we know within this story, she's been trying to get pregnant for a long time now, but she has always been unsuccessful. So that's the ironic part, right? One is where you pass on your hopes to your offspring, and then one is actually the hope of humanity lies in somebody who cannot have offspring. So maybe sort of like a callback right there. Of course, I could also be completely interpreting this sacrifice wrong. And when Asukai was speaking with Suima about this perfect seed, maybe the perfect seed isn't any particular girl or person, but it has to be created. So again, it's just kind of a thought. I'm not sure how he's going to do it, but it's just some food for thought, right? So maybe he is going to create this perfect seed from Orihara, but there are still steps that are needed in order for him to do it. It's not just a simple matter of Orihara already has this perfect flower within her, so he can just take it. So yeah, that's the point I'm getting at. Maybe she still needs to get pregnant in a way, and then that is the perfect seed. I'm not quite sure, but I believe it's not as straightforward as we are led to believe. So I think that covers everything I want to talk about this episode. Again, I love the pacing of this. Finally, we can move on. We can get a lot more info, so we can think and talk about a little bit more things instead of in the past episode where there really wasn't that much to talk about and not much to speculate about. So hopefully the next few episodes can continue with this kind of trajectory, and I would be one happy viewer. So let me know if I missed anything, and again, I apologize for my voice right now. Hopefully this weekend I can be healthy again, and so my voice wouldn't sound like this with this coarseness and all this coughing. But in any case, that has been episode 8 of Boogiepop, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.